Hi peeps, it's been a wee while since I made a video. Yeah, mostly recovering from that whole COVID malarkey and then flying back here and then spending a week away being support team for Scott, my husband, doing his hiking. Anyway, I'm back and I'm back to work and I'm back to making our wee videos. So today I was thinking, obviously because it's Father's Day, I was thinking about my dad and I was thinking about other dads, and actually, do you know, somebody said to me, a client said to me recently, what is the healthiest way to view your father? Is it healthy to always be angry at him? What she was really asking was permission to feel disappointed and angry with her own father. I think that's what she was really asking me for. Like, is it okay to feel like this? And we had a long discussion about it. And we drew a few conclusions. The first one was that all dads are dickheads. Yeah, including your dad. And all dads are heroes in their own way. There you go, from one end of the spectrum to the other. I think the way we get stuck viewing our parents is what does us the most damage in life. When we get stuck with a certain idea, this is who my parent was, whether it's, I had the most amazing father. Oh, he was terrific, couldn't fault him, he did everything for us, he just was the best. Not healthy, not realistic. Also at the other end of the spectrum of, oh, everything's my father's fault, he was a complete bastard, he did this, this and this, and he was terrible to my mother, or he was terrible to me, or whatever, and he was just a hopeless whatever. Also not healthy. I think when you're going through the therapeutic process, you have to be willing to give up your fantasies about your parents. You have to give up the idea that they were these wonderful things, because we hold on to that out of fear, out of a primal fear that we have to have as babies to keep us alive. We have to be scared of not having parents, and we have to see them as these wonderful demigods almost, to make sure that we stick with them, we stick by them while they nurture us. And then either life itself or your therapist will burst that bubble, and you suddenly start to realize, yeah, your mum and dad were dickheads, or they were screw-ups, or whatever happens to be your own personal story. And in therapy, you can get angry and you can rant and you can beat up my cushions. Come around and beat my cushions up anytime you like. It's a very special service I do for everybody. Beat up your cushions and call your parents all the bastards of the day and thrash the living stuffing out of all of the couch cushions or whatever else you're taking it out on, and get those emotions out. Not as a way of detaching yourself from your parents, but actually as a way to get closer to them. Because the minute you start to see your mum and dad as real, live people, then you start to grow, then you start to heal. So once you allow all that anger and upset out over how they didn't meet your requirements, it allows a space for you to be actually able to consider them as human beings who fucked up just as much as anybody else did in your life, and just as much as you do in other people's lives. And then you can get to forgive them. And I always think this is an important thing to consider when you're thinking about your parents, and that is they did their best. And their best may have been complete shite. It may have been not what you needed or wanted, but it was still their best. And I'm going to post a very interesting article that my friend Robert sent me, and it's about old-fashioned dads. Very interesting. And certainly my dad was an old-fashioned dad in that he wanted to provide for us, and he wanted us to feel a safety and a kind of a comfort in our lives that he hadn't had the luxury of feeling in his own parenting. He didn't like his own father. My grandfather was a conscientious objector in the First World War, and my father had literally zero respect for him, partially because of that. Well, mostly because of that, from what he told me. And he didn't want us to grow up with that. He wanted a relationship with his daughters that was close, and that, you know, that was something above and beyond what he'd had in his parenting. So he kind of, how would you say, he kind of overdid it in some ways and became quite controlling, and he was quite a manipulative parent because he wanted this closeness, and if you didn't give it to him, there was something wrong, and he needed it for himself and he wanted it for us. And it was kind of like, oh my goodness, that plus all the wage earning and figuring out how to run your own business and figuring out a marriage, you know, and everything all at once. And it became too much for him, and he started to drink heavily. And in the years that he was drinking, which was for most of my life, I lost him. I couldn't speak to him. I was so angry with him. He was angry with me. I was still at home, and I was basically the whipping boy for when he got drunk and was worried about his business, or was worried about his marriage, or whatever else was going on, or even, worried about me, or worried about my sisters, whatever. He would drink, and I would be on the receiving end of his frustration. And for many years, I just had not no relationship, but I just thought he was a complete dickhead, and he was a failure, and he was a drunk, and I had to see those things, and I had to feel those things, and then I let them go. And I actually can look back on my dad after seeing him in that light, letting go of any fantasies I had about him, seeing him warts and all. I was able to start forgiving him. I could see what a difficult life he had had. I could see how difficult it would have been for him to be such a sensitive, intellectual, gentle person in the harsh world of business. He'd been flung into the last 6 months of the Second World War, and was quite instrumental in the rebuilding of a democratic Germany for 12 years after the war ended. He had a very interesting but tough life. He came back with life experiences that none of us will ever be able to relate to, traumas and wonderful moments. Every time we used to say to him, what was the war like, he would say, you know, Charles Dickens quote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So he arrived in this world of being a father, this family environment that he was creating, coming from a broken past with a poor relationship with his own father, a pretty dysfunctional relationship with his mother for various reasons, and coming into the whole scenario as I say, a very soft, sensitive man with huge amounts of feminine energy, and was expected to be a tough guy. Expected to be a tough guy in the war, a tough guy after the war, tough guy earning money for his family to support us. And he messed it up, because you know what? Everybody messes things up. Everybody messes things up. I mess things up on a daily basis. I have stepchildren. I know without a shadow of a doubt I have fucked them up in various ways. I know I have loved them desperately and done my best for them. And that's the bottom line. It's doing your best. And your dad on Father's Day, whether he's still with you or not, and whether you love him or hate him, he did his best. He did his level best with the raw material that he was working with the parenting that he came from, with the hurt inner child that he carries around with him. He did his best, and he's probably, if he's alive, he's still doing it. And if he's passed on, hopefully you'll have a feeling of affection and respect for who he was and what he did for you now, even if he didn't have it when he was alive. But not a hero worship like, oh, you know, that glory that people take on when they die. Not that, oh, my father, I miss him every day of the week because he was my hero and I never realised. No, he wasn't. He was a dickhead. And he was a wonderful man. And he was everything in between. And no doubt he loved you. And he did the best. He just did his best.